Hi everyone, and welcome again to our English class. And today we're going to have another fascinating lesson. But just in case you're new to this channel, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, if you missed the previous lessons that we had, just simply click the links in the description box below so you can watch them. Okay, so let's get started. I would like you to do the following. I would like you to answer the question or the questions. So I'm going to show to you a picture of a mother and a daughter having a very nice conversation. The mother said, "What did you do yesterday, Floor?" Floor said, "I played doll with my friend Amy yesterday." Mom said, "What else did you do?" "We ate cookies and chocolate." "Did you enjoy a lot?" Floor said, "Yes, I did." Mother said, "By the way, were you and your friend Amy at the backyard last night?" Floor said, "Yes, we were." Now, based on the conversation that we just previously had, what do you think, or can you guess? What do you think is our lesson for today? Fantastic. Today we're going to have or to talk about simple past tense. Okay, simple past tense. But before I proceed, let me share to you first our learning objectives for today. Learning objectives. Given the resources, students should be able to, number one, understand the usage and structures of simple past tense. Number two, answer the differentiated exercises given. And number three, formulate their own sentences and questions using simple past tense. Okay, so let's talk about now learning objective number one. Okay, so learning objective number one, understand the usage and structures of simple past tense. Now, once again, when to use or when can we use simple past tense? Do you have any idea when to use simple past tense? Can you think? Let me see if your answer is correct. Now, we can use simple past tense we use the simple past to express the idea that an action started and finished at a specific time in the past. Okay, so let's make it simple. We use a simple past tense if we talk about an action that started in the past and also finished in the past. That's very clear. Okay, the action is started in the past and also finished in the past. As easy as that. Okay, in addition, we can also use simple past for a series of actions that happened in the past. Okay, series of actions that happened and finished in the past. Okay, now please consider the following time expressions being used with past tense. So these are the time expressions. Now these are, I'm giving to you an examples, but these are limited, so you can have more. First one, in 1980. So it doesn't mean it's really in 1980, but it can in 2000, in 2019, in 2020. So that's it. Last month, yesterday, last year, last week, and ago. So these are a few or some of the time expressions to be used in using simple past tense. Take note of that. Now, this time, I'm going to talk to you. English has two types of verbs in past tense. So, based on your previous knowledge, what are the two types of verbs in English when it comes to past tense? Do you have any idea? English has two types of verbs in past tense. Can you think of an answer? Fantastic. If you say regular verbs and irregular verbs, and then you did really listen to your teacher before. Okay, so again, English has two types of verbs when it comes to past tense. We have the regular verbs, and the irregular verbs. So what does it mean, regular and irregular verbs? Okay, don't worry. All of your answers or all of your questions will be answered later on. Okay, so look at the following list of past tense verbs. Which verbs are regular and which are irregular? So we have here number one, taught, walked, studied, gave, became, cried, lived, did. So we're going to classify now which one is regular and which one is irregular. Let's get started. Taught, irregular. Walked, regular. Studied, irregular. Gave, irregular. Became, irregular. Cried, regular. Lived, regular. Did, irregular. Now, based on the illustration, how can you define or how will you define regular and irregular verbs? Can you look at the illustration here? Taught, irregular, but walked, regular. Why is that? Okay, so because regular verbs are verbs that. So let's start first with regular verbs. So what does it mean, regular verb? Okay, now when you say regular verb or regular verbs, these are verbs that end with ed. Again, these are verbs or a verb that ends with ed. So this is what makes it regular. So when you say regular verbs, once again, these are verbs that end with ed when we transform into simple past tense. Another example, walk, study, cry, live. So for walk, look at this example. So walk, walk. We have to add ed. So that's how it becomes regular. So we just have to add d or ed. Study, studied, ed. Cry, it will become now cried, ed. Live, lived. Okay, so I'm going to discuss to you more later on how to formulate regular and irregular verbs. Okay, but as of this time, when we say regular verbs, these are verbs that end with d or ed or simply ed. So walk, in simple past, just add ed. Study, it will become now studied. Cry, it will become now cried. Live, it will become now lived. Okay, amazing. Now, this time, let's talk about irregular verbs. So, the opposite. When regular verb ends with ed or d, irregular verbs don't end with ed. Okay, it doesn't end with ed. Instead, the spelling, okay, the spelling of the verb, when you transform, when you make it in the simple past, will change. Okay, once again, irregular verbs, when you transform in simple past, the spelling of the verb will change. Okay, as easy as that. So some irregular verbs have vowel change in the past tense. Example, simple form and past tense. Become, became, the past tense with a A. Okay, so look at this. The spelling change. Okay, it added A. So we have our give, gave, and drive, drove, forget, forgot. Okay, so as you can see, you couldn't add ed, but instead we have to add the vowel. Okay, in the simple past tense. the vowel. Okay, so in the simple past, we have our A, O, and O. So these are vowels. Okay, so next, other irregular verbs have different kinds of change. So irregular verbs are mysterious, as they said it. Okay, so other irregular verbs have different kind of change. Examples: in simple past or in simple in the past, you have teach and taught. Okay, bring, brought, leave, left, hear, heard, buy, bought. So, Celia bought a new computer last weekend. So Celia bought a new computer last weekend. Now, as you can see here, teach, taught, bring, brought, leave, left, hear, heard, buy, bought. Now, like I said, the spelling of the verbs, when you transform it into simple past, the spelling changed. We couldn't add ed anymore. So that's how it makes it irregular. Okay, take note of that. Now, and some irregular verbs don't change at all. So it remains as it is. So again, and some irregular verbs, when you transform it into past tense, it doesn't change at all. Yeah, they don't change at all. Examples: hit, simple past hit, put, put, set, set. So the children set the table every Sunday. Now, as you can see, hit, hit. So put, put, set, set. So when you transform it into simple past, it didn't change. Okay, it remains as it is. So, and some irregular verbs don't change at all. So even if you transform it into, you change it into simple past, the structure still remains. Okay, still remains. All right. Examples of regular and irregular verbs. I saw Maria yesterday. So saw here is irregular. Okay, because the simple present is see, then saw. Okay, we couldn't say seed, because this is irregular. So I saw Maria yesterday. Now take note here, the time expression here is yesterday. Okay, now before I proceed, one more thing. To use simple past tense, we often mention the time expression. Again, when we use simple past tense, we often mention the time expression being used. So I saw Maria yesterday. So yesterday here is a time expression. Last Friday, the students took their spelling and vocabulary test. So last Friday, the students took their spelling and vocabulary test. Now, took here is it regular or irregular? Okay, this is irregular. So the simple present of took is take. So, and the time expression here is last Friday. They got married 2 years ago. Okay, they got married 2 years ago. So got here is it regular or irregular? Perfect. So got here is irregular verb. So the simple present of got is get. So, and the time expression here is 2 years ago. She played the piano last night. So she played the piano last night. Now, played is regular verb. Okay. Now, these actions are over and finished. So these examples here are over and finished. That is a reason why we have to use simple past tense. Once again, simple past tense, these are the action started in the past and finished in the past. And time expressions are, we have to mention, okay? Or time expressions are often used when we use time for simple past tense. All right, so how do we form the simple past tense? So how to make a sentence, how to make a question, yes or no question, and WH question. How can we form? So let's start first affirmative form. Now, when you say affirmative, once again, it is simply known as positive sentence. So affirmative form or positive form using regular verbs and irregular verbs. So we have here the pronouns, or also known as the subject. So I, you, he, she, it, we, you, and they. So I worked in the garden yesterday. You worked in the garden yesterday. He worked in the garden yesterday. She worked in the garden yesterday. Now, as you can see here, the verb here is worked. Now, it ends with ed. So therefore, this is regular verb. Okay, you could also say, I danced at the party last night. You danced, he danced, and she danced at the party last night. Now, the verb here is danced, and it ends with ed. Therefore, this is regular verb. Okay, so it carried the heavy box, or I carried the heavy box. We carried the heavy box. So the verb here is carried, and it ends with ied or ed. Okay, so this is regular verb. Now, you could also say we bought new shoes. You bought new shoes. They bought new shoes. So bought here is the verb, and is it end with d or ed? No. So the spelling changed, and therefore this is what we called irregular verbs. So once again, if the verb ends with d or ed, that's regular, but the verb doesn't end with d or ed, therefore that is what we call irregular verbs, most especially if the spelling changed. Okay, so how do we form the simple past tense in negative form? Again, how do we form the negative or the simple past tense using negative sentence? So once again, we have here the subject, the pronouns I, you, he, she, it, we, you, and they. Afterwards, we have to add didn't or did not to make it negative. Again, we have to add a word didn't or did not in order for us to make it negative. And then after the word didn't, the verb in simple present. Take note. Now, these are the most common mistakes of some students. So, if there is a didn't, if there is did and didn't here, you have to use the simple present. Okay, you couldn't say I didn't played with ed here. No, because we have already didn't here or did. So to make it negative once again, we have to add didn't. So subject. So I, you, he, she, it, we, you, and they. And then the word didn't to make it negative, and the verb in simple present form. So I didn't play tennis last weekend. Time expression. You didn't play tennis last weekend. He didn't play tennis last weekend. She didn't play tennis last weekend, and so on and so forth. Another example, I didn't clean the windows. So I didn't clean the windows, or they didn't clean the windows. You didn't clean the windows. So example, subject, and then the word didn't to make it negative, and then clean, you couldn't add ed here because we already have didn't here. Take note of that. If we have didn't here, or did or didn't, you always use simple present after the word didn't. Okay, next one. We didn't go the dentist. You didn't go the dentist. They didn't go the dentist. So subject, and didn't to make it negative. And after the word didn't, once again, we have to use the simple present form. Please always remember that. Now, affirmative and negative form, okay? So we have another structure, affirmative or the positive and negative form, but this time we have to use the be verb was and were. Again, affirmative form, affirmative and negative form using the be verb was and were. Now, once again, when we say was and were, they're what we call be verbs. Okay, be verbs. Now, another example, again, the subject. Okay, I, he, she, it, we, you, and they. These are once again, they, subject. And we have here was and wasn't at school yesterday. So I was and wasn't at school yesterday. Now, was here is affirmative, and to make it negative, we have to make it wasn't. Wasn't. That's how you make it negative form. So I was or I wasn't at school yesterday. Was if positive and wasn't if negative. And of course, time expression. We, you, and they. We were or we weren't at the beach last weekend. Now, use was or and wasn't for I, he, she, and it, and use we and use were and weren't for we, you, and they. Take note. Now, in question form. Now, this time, let's proceed to question or question form. How can we make a question using simple past tense? First, there are actually three ways of creating or formulating questions in simple past tense. First form is by the use of the be verb was and the was and were. Now, first, let's talk first about was. So we have the was, and then again, the be verb was, and then the subject. Was I, was he, was she, was it. Afterwards, hungry. So was I hungry? So the structure here is the be verb first, afterwards the subject, and then the verb. So was I hungry? If you wish to answer that, yes, she was hungry. Yes, she was. If not, no, she wasn't hungry, or no, she wasn't. Now, this time we can use the be verb were. Be verb were for we, you, and they. Same structure. So were we at the theater last weekend? Were you at the theater last weekend? Were they at the theater last weekend? Now, if you wish to answer that, yes, we were, and no, we weren't. As easy as that. Now, this time, let's have another form, or the question form. We finished about using the be verbs was and were, and this time we have to create a question in simple past form using the auxiliary verb did. Again, we have to create a question form using the auxiliary verb did. The structure is very easy. We have did plus the subject. Did I, did you, did he, did she, did it, did we, did you, did they, and then afterwards the verb. Now take note here, the verb here is it's always in simple present. Did I find your umbrella? If there is did here, we always use the simple present form of the verb here. So did I find, did you find, did he find, did she find, did it find, did we find, did you find, did they find your umbrella? So the structure is very easy. All right, so once again, we have here the word did, and then we have here the subject. And then once again, if you have the auxiliary verb did here, you have to use the simple present form here. So did I find your umbrella? Did you find your umbrella? Did he find your umbrella? And so on and so forth. Okay, now if you wish to answer the question, you could say, did I find your umbrella? Yes, I found my umbrella. Or you can say, in a shortened form, you can also say, yes, I did. In negative, you can also say, no, I didn't find my umbrella, or no, I didn't. Just in case you wish to answer the questions. Take note. Now, this time we're going to, I'm going to teach you on how to formulate a question or questions using WH questions. Now, when we say WH, once again, it simply talks about what, where, when, who, and how. Okay, these are WH questions. Now, the formula here is quite easy. So as you can see here, we have here the WH, and then the auxiliary verb did, and then we have here the subject. Now, of course, if you have the auxiliary verb did here, you always use the simple present form of the verb. So what you play, and then the time expression, or what did you play yesterday? Okay, where did you play yesterday? Okay, so say for example, another example is where did Sarah buy 3 years ago, as you can see here? Or who did James visit 3 years ago? Or did Tony and Sam visit 3 years ago? So always remember the formula. We have here the WH form, the auxiliary verb, the subject, and then the verbs in simple present form. And of course, the time expression. Okay, so I repeat. In order for us to formulate WH questions in simple past form, the formula is WH form, auxiliary verb, the subject, and the verbs in simple present form, and of course, the time expressions. Okay, please don't forget. Let's talk about now the spelling rules in order for us to create or to formulate simple past form. Now, first, here is if the verb here, or if the verb it is in CVC, or if you have to double the consonant if the consonant is stressed. First, you have to double the consonant if the consonant is stressed. Say for example here is stop. And then you have to double because this is what we call now the CVC, or this is the vowel sound here, or the vowel letter. So O, you have to double that. So you have to double P, and then add ed. Swap. Okay, swap, swapped. Okay, you have to double that if the consonant is stressed. And the next to before the consonant is what we call the vowel letter. And number 2, add only D when the verb ends with E. Again, add only D when the verb ends with E. Say for example, love. So it ends with letter E. So therefore, you have to only add ed. Save. It ends with E, so saved. So simply add ed. Now, for those verbs ending in Y preceded by a consonant, when you say consonant, we have here A, E, I, O, U. These are vowels. So the remaining alphabet, or the remaining letters are what we call consonants. Okay, so verbs ending in Y preceded by a consonant, change Y to IE, then add ED. As simple as that. Again, change Y to I, then add ED. See for example, hurry. Now, before Y is a consonant. as you can see. Again, hurry. Before it ends with Y, but before Y, it's R, and R is what we call the consonant. Okay, so hurry, hurried. So you have to delete Y here and change to I and add ed. So he hurried, watch out. So play, played. So this is for when the verb ends in the Y, just simply add ed afterwards because this is regular form. So let's continue. Now let's talk about now the learning objective number 2. So answer the differentiated exercises given. Directions. Put the verbs between brackets into the correct form in simple past. Again, put the verbs in between brackets into correct form in simple past. Okay, so I'm going to read this one first, and then let's answer afterwards. Last year, I spent blank my holiday in Ireland. It be blank great. I traveled blank around the city by car with 2 friends, and we visit blank lots of interesting places. In the evenings, we usually go blank to a cafe. We be blank very lucky with the weather. If not rain, blank a lot. We see blank some beautiful rainbows. I have blank an amazing holiday. Now this time, let's apply of what you just previously learned in my discussion. So let's start with number 1. Last year I spend. So what is the simple past of spend? Fantastic. So you will say spent. So last year I spent my holiday in Ireland. It, then be. Remember be? The be verbs was and were. Okay. It. The subject here is it in singular form. Therefore, we have to use was. So it was great. Now travel. Now travel is regular verb. Therefore, we will say, I traveled around the city by car with 2 friends and we visit. What is the past form? The simple past form of visit. Okay, very good. You will say visited. So we visited lots of interesting places in the evenings. We usually go. Now, what is the simple past of go once again? Okay, so we usually went to a cafe and we be. Now, here once again, be. It talks about was and were, but this time the subject is plural. So we will say, if the subject is plural, and we will say were. So we were very lucky with the weather. It not rain. So here, this is what we call negative sentence now. It not rain. So what is your answer here? You'll say, amazing. You will say, it didn't rain a lot. Okay, negative. Did you remember? It didn't rain a lot. We see some beautiful rainbows. So what is the simple past form of see? Can you think of an answer? Fabulous. You will say saw. So we saw some beautiful rainbows. Okay, last but not the least, I have. What is the simple past form of have? Great. So you will say, I had an amazing holiday. So let's read once again the entire paragraph with the correct answer. So last year, I spent my holiday in Ireland. It was great. I traveled around the city by car with two friends and we visited lots of interesting places. In the evenings, we usually went to a cafe. We were very lucky with the weather. It didn't rain a lot. We saw some beautiful rainbows. I had an amazing holiday. Next one is next activity. Now, I would like you to complete the conversation using was for positive, wasn't for negative, and were for positive and weren't for negative. Okay, so once again, complete the conversation using was for positive sentence and wasn't for negative and were for um, plural form in positive and weren't for negative in plural form. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so let's start with letter A. Were you hungry? Letter B. Yes, I blank a little bit hungry. So it's yes. It means positive. Yes, great job. I was a little bit hungry. Okay, I was a little bit hungry. And letter A, was your sister at school? No, she blanked at school. No here is negative. So we will say no, she wasn't at school. All right. So, all right. Next one. A. Were your parents at work? Yes. My mom, yes, means positive. My mom was at work, but my dad, no, this signifies negative form, but negative. But my dad wasn't at work. He was ill. Okay. Was Peter your friend? Or was Peter your friend? And Bill? Peter and Bill? Now, these are plural. Okay, plural subject here. Peter and Bill were my best friends. Okay, so take note of that. Now, learning objective number 3, formulate their own sentences and questions using simple past tense. Again, you have to create or formulate your own sentence or sentences in using simple past tense. Now, I'd like you to arrange the following words below and form either WH question or yes or no question. Remember, so arrange the following words below and form either WH or yes or no question. Number 1, Bill, arrive, on time. So this is WH question using auxiliary verb did. So can you formulate your question here using the auxiliary verb, yes or no question, using the auxiliary verb did? I'll give you 5 seconds. Great job. You will say, did Bill arrive on time? Okay, so, and at B, Marion, the party. You will say, 5 seconds, please. Fantastic. You will say, was Marion at the party? Okay, next one. There, how, Joe, get. Now, the clue here is how. So it means you have to formulate WH question. I'll give you 5 seconds to formulate your WH question here in simple past form. So you could say, how did Joe or Joseph get there? Okay, so how did Joe or Joseph get there? So remember the formula we have here, the WH and then the auxiliary verb did and then the subject and the verb in simple present tense. Okay, how did Joseph get there? Next one, they, not, address, there, you. Again, they, not, address, there, and you. You'll say 5 seconds, please. Okay, negative form. Didn't they tell you? Didn't they tell you their address? Because we have here a word not, which means negative. Didn't they tell you their address? Amazing. Now, letter B. Formulate your sentences in simple past form using the verbs given below. So I'm going to project project verbs here, and all you have to do is to formulate your sentences in simple past form. I am not expecting you to arrive the same answer as mine, but I'm expecting you to formulate sentences based on the structures that I have just given to you. Okay, again, formulate your sentences in simple past form using the verbs given. So I will be giving you verbs here. Go. Can you make a sentence using the verb go in simple past form? Now, all you have to do first is change this verb here into simple past. So what is the simple past form of go? Okay, so you will say, so ever go, study, and forgot. Number one, go. 5 seconds, please. Make your sentence. Either negative or positive. Okay, so you will say, I went to school yesterday. Okay, I went to school yesterday. So remember, the simple past of go is went. So, and then the time expression here is yesterday. Okay, so again, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to arrive at the same sentence, but we have to arrive at the same structure. Study. Now, change study first into simple past form, and then make your sentence. You'll say, perfect. She studied her homework last night. She studied her homework last night. So study, studied. Again, the structure or the formula here or the rule here is if the verb ends with Y, when you make into simple past, delete the Y here and change into I, and then add ED. So she studied her homework last night. Once again, I'm not expecting you to arrive at the same sentence, but I'm expecting you to arrive at the same structure. Forgot. So here, I already gave you the simple past, forgot. So you don't have to change this. So how can you make your sentence? 5 seconds. All right, fantastic. You'll say, they forgot to study their lesson few weeks ago. Okay, they forgot to study their lesson few weeks ago. Okay, few weeks ago. Okay, forgot. So I already gave here, and then you don't have to change that. Okay, eat. Change eat into simple past form. You'll say 5 seconds. Do not forget to include time expression as well. So you can say, my friend ate his dinner 2 hours ago. Okay, my friend ate his dinner 2 hours ago. Amazing. Last but not the least, drive. Change the verb, change drive into simple past form. You could say, and 5 seconds, make your sentence, please. Perfect. I drove a car last year. Okay, drive, drove. and then the time expression. I drove a car last year. Okay, homework. Now, I would like you to do the following, or I would like you to do something. I would like you to research 10 regular verbs and 10 irregular verbs and have them memorized for your next examination. Okay, research 10 regular verbs and 10 irregular verbs and have them memorized for your next examination. Okay, and I would like you to correct this sentence here. Please correct this sentence. Sentence number 1, or this question here. Did you went to school yesterday? Is this correct? If you said no, if you said wrong, and then you got it right. This sentence is, or this question form is absolutely wrong. How will you correct this? Okay, you will say, you can correct this by saying, did you go to school yesterday? Remember here, what I told you, if we have the auxiliary verb did here, you have to use the simple present form of the verb here. So did you go to school yesterday? And this is correct already. Okay, so if you wish to answer this question here, what's this? If you wish to answer, you'll say, yes, I did. And then if no, no, I didn't. So make it positive and negative. Okay, so, all right. So once again, thank you so much for listening. And I hope that you are going to, if you find this video informative, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Joseph's English Class. Thank you so much and have a good